So here's one of those orchids that had a great flowering display in the previous season, and then it was just left to do its own thing, and suddenly we start noticing the wrinkling pseudobulbs, the fan-shaped crinkling in the leaves, all the telltale signs of dehydration. So with dehydration, we now know that we need to look at what the cause of it is. So we look and we can see the media is all decomposed. So that means there's no air getting into the roots, and the roots are probably starting to rot and is reducing the ability for the orchid to absorb water. This is well past its repotting time. So we'll remove it from the basket and have a look to see what the roots are telling us. Also, we'll have a look in here now that we've been brought to examine more closely. We've got a little bit of scale. This is quite easy to sort out. So otherwise, good strong growth, a little bit of insect problem and a little bit of dehydration. So just in time. And we give our orchid a little extra summing, just to give it that little extra boost post-transplant. And welcome to the Nature Company. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming videos so you don't miss out on a thing. So now it comes to inspecting down around the roots, removing it from its pot. And the one nice thing about these wire baskets is they can be used again and again and again. So just giving it a quick spray down with a disinfectant, and then we can just plant it straight back into its original basket again. So now we'll open up around through the roots, pull away all the coir fiber. We can see how decomposed this media was. It's basically become soil now. So we can see that it was just keeping all the air movement away from the roots. We can see the roots are still nice and plump and white, which is what we want to see with brassias. And we can see this white powdery stuff in around the roots here. And here at the top, this is cochineal. It's not mealybug. Mealybug has those little, has rather large soft-bodied insects amongst it. This is cochineal. It gives this almost a similar look to mealybugs though. We can see the plant itself has divided into separate parts, but we'll be repotting it all into the same pot. Just loosening up the matted root mass, removing the parts of the roots that are no longer viable. Always good disinfected tools. We'll remove a portion of this old back bulb system just to ensure that good aeration in and around the roots. You'll see I'm cutting away a fair amount of the what look like viable roots anyway. It's because I want to ensure that we get that air movement into the base here, and all of the new pseudobulbs are going to push out their new root volume as they start to grow. So we just want to make sure we can get our treatments in for this cochineal right into the roots and allow that air movement so the new roots can set in really well. Okay, now you can see how much of the root mass I've actually removed here. This is to allow that air and the treatment I'm going to be doing to get right into there by the rhizome, and that will sort out all of this cochineal and allow space and air for the new roots to set nicely without causing any more further rot or damage. You can see this one I've removed almost the entire root system except for these new roots. That are being formed by the new pseudobulbs that are starting to form. So these new growths will send out nice, strong, good growth, and that will set your plant back in its place and get it going again. And then with the baskets, just sanitize them off. Putting a coir liner back into your basket. This is the only real purpose of this is to stop the bark from falling out. But because the bark that I use for my brassias is quite a fine bark, as they like to be relatively moist, I just need something that's going to hold the bark in place. And because these brassias are from moister climates, they don't like to dry out terribly much, so we use a nice fine bark, and I just add a very small amount of sphagnum moss just to help keep that little bit of extra moisture in, so that my watering frequency can be kept to a minimum. Make sure again that you're using moistened bark so that you're not immediately putting your plant under water stress. To treat the orchids for the scale and for the cochineal, I'm just going to use our good old trusty famous garlic tonic and give it a good spray right into that root volume, between all those gaps. Make sure they're getting a good drenching and a real good dose of that garlic. We can already see just by spraying it with our garlic, the scales coming off really easily. If you have a particularly difficult time with scale, then I would suggest go for the chemical pesticides, but I often find my trusty garlic water gets in and does the trick quite well, and I don't have terribly much of a consistent problem with scale. So there we go, we now have a well treated brassia that we're going to transplant back up into our basket, and then it's just as basic as filling in the media to the bottom, setting your orchid as you would like it to be placed, and once we've finished repotting, we'll be giving the secret ingredient to make sure we alleviate all the stress that we're putting it under. Now these brassias do like to have a rest period directly after their flowering. One of the reasons that he was left to himself and was forgotten about for a moment, but this is going to bring him straight back to life without him even realizing anything has happened, and we should still get an amazing flower display out of him as the beginning of summer sets in. With these brassias, they don't like to be disturbed too often, so if you're repotting, always, instead of just going one size up, go 2, possibly even 3 sizes up, so that you can really let your plant grow. They are relatively quick growers in the right climate, so they can fill it out quite relatively quickly, but also that way you don't have to repot them as often, and then you also get those large flowering displays. And notice I'm not compacting the bark down, ensuring that none of the real rhizome growth is covered up. Everything's settled down on top, and the new pseudobulbs can root straight into the top of the surface of the media and then down into it. And I promised we're going to show you what the secret ingredient is. A little bit of sugar makes the medicine go down. The medicine go down is your molasses water. That's what's going to give it the vigor and boost it needs after all that transplant shock, to bring it back to its vibrant self again, so that it can recover quickly from the transplant shock, from that removal of the root volume, and from those pesky insects that we wiped away. We'll have the link to both our molasses tonic and the garlic tonic in the description down below, so if you need to get those, it's an easy to do. And thanks for watching. If you have learned anything or found this information useful in any way, please hit that like button, subscribe down below if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.